Wingman Joker, thank you for listening to this channel and please support the channel. Please subscribe. Chapter 18. Mother-in-law. That meal was fabulous, Adrian declared, touching his bloated stomach as he left the restaurant with Summer. For a second there he considered buying the restaurant, but upon noticing the green leaf next to its sign, he realized that he had no chance. This establishment belonged to another one of the world's top magical families. The Green Seed family specializes in alchemy, no wonder the food was good. Glad you liked it, Summer sighed. Adrian frowned, she had been acting a little strange ever since that encounter with Lloyd, barely eating anything. You don't have to worry about that guy trying to harm me, remember, I am a Red Oak. He told her as they headed in a certain direction. I can easily call my father to sack him up. You don't need to bring your father when you are showing off your power. She spat. And, I am not worried about that, she replied with another sigh. Then what? He asked as he stopped by a street-side florist and asked her to arrange a bouquet for him, pointing to different kinds of browsers as he instructed the shopkeeper auntie. You don't have to worry about it, she sighed again absent-mindedly. You think I will look down on you because you used to hang out with those guys? He asked as he paid the florist, then continued walking with a simple white bouquet under his arm. She seemed hesitant. Such unnecessary thoughts. I already look down on you, you know. He declared. You don't have to say it like that, she hissed. There was no anger in her voice, just remorse. She already knew that. She was a cauldron after all. Who wouldn't look down on a cauldron? No, seriously, I look down on everyone but myself, he said in a narcissistic manner, clarifying a very important fact. So you are nothing special in that regard. Yup, we are the best, the very best, the absolute best. I am speechless whether to feel grateful or insulted by that remark, she said, telling the truth. Totally forgetting about her worries as she wondered whether she should thank him for being considerate or kick his ass for being this shameless. I am just saying. For example, I can easily tell what's going on in that scheming brain of yours, he said, raising one eyebrow. You are afraid that I would feel angry because of your friendship with Lloyd, making it hard for you to convince me to help your mother later. He finally said as he stopped and turned around. Yes. Summer gasped after she answered absent-mindedly. You knew? She asked nervously. Yup, it was all in the report, I just skipped over it yesterday, Adrian declared. That's why we are here at the moment, he added, spreading his hands and making Summer finally mind her surroundings. She was near a hospital's entrance, a place she was very familiar with. She gasped, finally recalling that the restaurant she led Adrian to was right beside the hospital where her mother was a patient. That's why she was used to eating in it. You can't, she quickly began to speak, but without minding her, Adrian quickly stepped inside, entering the lobby, forcing her to silently follow him. I was planning to visit my mother-in-law after I finished shopping, but since you brought me to this neighborhood, I might as well finish things here, Adrian said, totally ignoring her as she tried to pull him back. Can you not visit her today? She asked nervously, looking around to make sure no one she knew was around. We have a lot of things to do, and she might not be feeling good. She didn't know you sold yourself off to be a cauldron in exchange for your father paying her treatment fees, right? Adrian asked in a low voice. Summer nodded nervously, looking around to make sure no one heard what he said. She had been begging her stupid father to help her mother who was suffering from a rare mana disease for a while now, but he never agreed, but on the contrary, he began reprimanding her more than once for even mentioning it. This was because his wife hated Summer's mother, the maid who managed to sleep with her master. Yesterday, however, something changed. As soon as she entered her house, she noticed that her snobbish stepmother was sitting to the side with a smirk on her face when her father, who was discussing something with a man dressed in black, directly confronted her. He agreed to pay for her mother's hospitalization bill and for one round of treatment in exchange for Summer accepting to be a cauldron for some big shot. She didn't hesitate, as her mother was in a very bad and critical condition. However, she tried to bargain, as one round of treatment would only give her mother about 6 months before her sickness relapsed. Mana rot was a recurring disease. Sadly, her father refused to budge, telling her that the medicine was too costly, and if she wanted to help her mother, she needed to agree to sign the contract and then try to ask her future master for help. Knowing that he was right, Summer finally signed it, and despite her shock and reluctance, last night she gave up all resistance, playing along with Adrian's rhetoric, not really expecting his stupid method to work. This morning, after she discovered that Adrian's method really worked, She suspected that he must have investigated her before, and must have asked his family's experts to formulate the method to allow her to be a magician. Although she wasn't sure whether he did this because he genuinely liked her or because he considered her some kind of toy, this situation gave her hope that if she pleased him enough, he might as well help her to cure her mother. She just thought that she needed to find the right time to ask, never expecting him to have already read her mind. Adrian smiled. For some strange reason, he found Summer's flustered look very amusing. Yup, we are such sadists. Speak of yourself. Idiots. Then how about this? I will just say that you are my girlfriend. Adrian said with a smile. Your mother wouldn't hate you for that. She looked at him and scowled. Quote. Why are you doing this? She whispered in a low voice as she followed behind him. Are you an idiot or something? Adrian asked plainly. I told you yesterday that I have a crush on you, and no matter what officially your status is, I will always consider you my wife. He said. This girl has a problem trusting others. Yup. Summer frowned. What he said made sense. All his actions were clear, indicating that he really liked her. She didn't want to admit it. Somehow this made her feel guilty for using him. No, she was sold to him. No matter how noble his actions appeared to be, at the end of the day, he chose to make her his cauldron rather than formally propose. She never believed that it was his father's doing as he told her yesterday. He couldn't have been this prepared if it was his father's idea. Holy shit. Yup, the girl thinks that we have been stalking her, asking the family to come out with the method we taught her. I suspected as such. What? That is logical, you know. What to do now? Play along. Adrian, who could easily figure out what she was thinking about, sighed. So, will you pay for my mother's treatment? She asked. This was what mattered. If he would do that, she would serve him faithfully no matter what. You will see, Adrian said as they reached her mother's room, where he knocked on the door and then entered when he heard the replay from the inside. Inside, a sickly-looking charming woman was leaning on a hospital bed, with her face grimacing in pain. She was Clara Dinn, Summer's mother. According to the report, she was orphaned at a young age and had to go work in a noble family's house to support herself. There she seduced and slept with the housemaster, becoming his lover, giving birth to Summer by the end of the year. At first, she managed to keep it a secret from the man's wife and continued to work in the mansion and raise her daughter, but the truth was uncovered a few years later when that man's wife used a magical camera to record her husband's nightly activities. This naturally ended in Carla being kicked out and having to separate from Summer, who was only 5 years old back then. After leaving that house, she became depressed and fell into some hard times, finally meeting a nice man who helped her. After settling in and finding a new job as a waitress, she married him, giving birth to her other daughter Rose. The pretty young 13-year-old girl in a plain dress was at the moment sitting beside her. Sadly, her happiness didn't last as her poor husband got in an accident and died a year later, leaving her not only to struggle to raise her youngest daughter, but also a stupid brat whom the man conceived from a previous marriage. If it were not for Summer, who found her and donated most of her allowance to the family, they would have really been in a very bad situation. Just when she thought she could manage somehow, bad fortune struck again, with her being diagnosed with mana rot a year ago. Sis. The girl, Rose, exclaimed as she noticed Summer. This is the one, she asked as she noticed Adrian. For a moment there, she couldn't lift her eyes from his handsome face. Clara, hearing her daughter, opened her eyes slightly and looked at the newcomers. Ah, Summer, who followed behind Adrian, didn't know what to say. That woman is in great pain. Yup. I can feel it from here. The mana in her body is very strange. Why is it collecting like that? Let's investigate. I am Adrian Redoak, Summer's boyfriend, Adrian declared as Summer closed the door. You must be Lady Clara and little Rose, right? Ah, right. You are the one, Rose gasped, feeling a little jealous of her sister. Rose. Summer spat. Ah. Rose quickly held her tongue. The one what? Her mother asked with difficulty. Answer. The one who is going to pay for your treatment. Adrian quickly said. Mother-in-law. He added sheepishly. He was not sure what the situation was. What? Clara gasped, finally fully opening her eyes and looking at her silent daughters and then at Adrian. What is going on here? She asked, then coughed slightly. Summer wanted to say something. Not you, Rose. Clara turned to her younger daughter. Ah. Rose hesitated, looking at Adrian and then at Summer. Answer. Her mother said, her face turning white as speaking seemed to have been painful for her. Yesterday, Summer called and told me that she met a rich young man who really wants to marry her and that she has asked him to pay for the treatment fee in exchange for accepting him, Rose said, glimpsing at Adrian. Her sister never told her he was this handsome. She wanted me to confirm with the hospital's accountant whether the money was sent. I see. Clara nodded and looked at her daughter. Quote. Summer, is what your sister said true? Quote. Summer just nodded nervously. Clara, watching her reaction, frowned as she turned to Adrian. You are a red oak? She asked. Yup, the red oak, Adrian said with a smile. This woman was way smarter than anyone. Summer must have gotten her brains. What is a red oak? Rose asked. Never mind that. Summer, take your sister and leave the room. You might as well find a vase for the flowers, her mother said. Ignoring her daughter's question, I want to have a private word with young Master Adrian. Ah, Mom, but, Summer wanted to say something. Leave, Clara said in a low yet authoritative voice. She was clearly furious. Mom, leave, don't worry, Adrian said with a smile. Summer frowned, and looked at her sister before both of them slowly retreated. She was sweating heavily on her way out as she gave Adrian an imploring look. The door closed. Young Master, that bastard sold her to you, right? Clara asked directly, failing to note that Adrian had just made a flick with his finger locking the room's door. Yup, Summer is my classmate, and I always had a crush on her, Adrian said as he took a seat on the chair Rose was using. When I heard that she was on sale, I hurried to ask my father to make a bid. Was it really you who paid for the treatment? She asked, appreciating his honesty. No, it was that idiot father of hers. He did it in exchange for Summer signing the contract, Adrian said. Typical, he must have gotten some huge benefit in exchange. He got the right to secure some materials for the tower. His company has been struggling lately after his son began helping him. Adrian said, recalling the report. Oh, typical. You plan to pay for my treatment from now on? She asked directly, changing the subject. She didn't want to remember that bastard. That's the plan. I see, Clara sighed. She clearly didn't know how to think of the current awkward situation. This might be rude, but may I ask you a question? You want to know why I am doing this? Yes, I like Summer, and I want the people whom I like to be happy. Adrian said, telling the truth for once. I already told her that I consider her my wife. Oh, Clara frowned. This was too good to be true. And your treatment cost, although very big for the average person, for me it is no more than spare change, he said. But you still don't have to do it, she said. You already got the girl last night, didn't you? She asked. You don't need to take care of this sickly old woman. A cauldron has no choice but to serve her master. My dear mother-in-law, you are as skeptical as your daughter. Has anyone told you that? Adrian asked, dodging the question. She is as skeptical as me. Clara smiled a little at his remark. Then she began coughing. Adrian quickly hurried and helped her lay back. Since you took the liberty to call me mother-in-law, may I ask you for a favor? Of course, as long as it doesn't involve you wanting to sleep with me I am fine with it. Quote. I am not saying that you are not pretty, he quickly explained. She was in her 30s, and even her sickly affliction failed to hide her beauty. It is just that the situation would become awkward between you and Summer. Quote. That's not funny, you know, Clara said coldly. I was not trying to be funny. It is just that someone with my status and charm has to always be wary of women going after my body. Our body is a treasure. Yes, it can only be touched by lol. Go face the fucking wall. Sorry, damn pervert. Quote. Looking at his handsome face, Clara sighed. He got a point there, he was the most handsome guy she had ever met. She just didn't like his narcissistic attitude. Just promise me to take care of Summer no matter what. She can be a little strong-headed, but she is a good girl. She said. She has heard stories of how some mages abused their cauldrons. Nowadays, it was a popular subject in female fiction, how the poor abused cauldron took revenge on the great magician who used then dumped her. There were also stupid stories about how a black-bellied, cold CEO would fall for an ugly little cauldron. I promise, he sighed. May I take a look at your situation? He asked after a few moments of awkward silence. Do you know medicine? She asked. I am a red oak, he said, shamelessly using his family name. Then allow me to bother you a little, Clara said, stretching her thin hand toward him expecting nothing, just to satisfy his curiosity. Adrian politely grabbed her wrist, then closed his eyes and made his mana slowly enter the woman's weak body. According to the report, Clara suffered from mana rot. He had no idea what that was as it could mean a myriad of things, so he had to make the diagnosis himself. The process took 5 minutes as Adrian slowly withdrew his hand. What do you think? Clara asked, expecting the same silly excuses she only got when a doctor inspected her. All saw the same thing. Mana just had the tendency to crystallize like tiny sharp needles along her blood vessels for no apparent reason. Those crystals not only obstructed the blood flow but also caused punctures to her internal organs, making the rot. No one had an explanation for why this happened, and the only cure was mana-solving elixir, usually used to aid the forging of magical artifacts. It didn't only cost a fortune to get but was poisonous to her body as it was never meant to be used on humans. No wonder that Summer was like that. She must have inherited this from you, Adrian said as if pondering. What do you mean? Does she have mana rot? She quickly asked in a worried voice. Not that. It has to do with her strange meridian's composition. Adrian said. You are not from around here, right? He asked. What do you mean? Your family, is the mana rot hereditary in it? Yes, my mother died of it, so did her mother, Clara sighed. Her daughters were probably fated to suffer the same. Do you know where your ancestors hail from? He inquired. Do you have anyone who came from a strange origin? He added, clarifying his question. Oh, well, Clara looked at him with admiration. He might be onto something. My mother told me that my great-great-grandmother was found and washed on the shore of the Western Blood Sea. She had dark skin that was tattooed all over with white symbols, and she couldn't speak the common tongue, so many locals feared her and they imprisoned her in some very bad conditions, she said. She seemed to have been pregnant back then, and died right after giving birth to my great-grandmother 3 months later, Clara said. We always presumed that our condition had something to do with her, but we lack any further information as her body was cremated, she sighed, reaching for her neck where she took a strange pendant that was tight with a string. It was a kind of tribal claw pendant. This is the only thing that was left of her. I showed it to some appraisers and they told me that it was the bone of a low-ranking demonic beast, worth nothing. She hid nothing. Adrian slowly touched the pendant and then frowned. Fascinating, he said as his mind turned. A demonic dragon bone. It is crafted as a life protection tool. Too bad it is spent. Yeah, but damn it, we should have seen this miles away when we inspected Summer. No wonder. Those guys are, yup, demonic beasts hunting tribes. Are there people like that in this world? Beyond the Blood Sea, we must investigate, and get all the pretty girls. Obviously. What? Clara asked as she watched a smile appear on his face. She could tell it was genuine. I might have a cure for you, more than one, he said, pushing away the unnecessary thoughts he was having. What? Clara frowned. Are you kidding me? Adrian shamelessly grabbed her wrist again, and then before she could ask what she felt, something passed through her painfully hot blood vessels like a breeze of cold air on a hot summer day, calming them at once. Ah, she gasped, the feeling was just so comfortable. Let me explain your condition first, he said as he let go. She didn't want him to, but didn't dare to grab onto him. You can judge for yourself right after, he added. What was that? She asked, ignoring him. She could feel it, the place where that feeling passed no longer hurt. First let me ask you, do you know why Summer can't be a magician? He asked, deciding to use Summer for some experiments tonight. Because I am a null? Clara asked quickly. He was from one of the top families, she told herself repeatedly, this guy must know many things. No, you are not a null, you just don't have magical meridians, Adrian said with an excited voice. Wasn't not having magical meridians the simplest definition for being a null? She asked, wanting him to get to the point. There are special cases. I believe that you might have the power to use magic of some sort, just not through your meridians, but through your blood vessels, they are special. Adrian stated. Young master, this joke is not funny. I am not joking, your vessels, unlike those of normal humans that would explode on the contact of magic, have the power to conduct mana. He clarified. What? Clara frowned. That was crazy. Wait, does this have to do with my sickness? She asked. Although she didn't fully get it, she thought of something. Yes, your vessels are acting like antennas, grabbing mana from the air and storing it, causing your current condition. Antenna, she was not familiar with that word. A receiver of sorts. Then shouldn't I be able to use magic? Why is it crystallizing? She asked. That's the problem, you can't just expect to use pure mana, you need to turn them into threads, he said. Threads? Ah, sorry, I forgot that you are not a magician. Think of it as a special kind of mana, Adrian pondered. Your body, like Summer's, needs a very special kind of mana to work, he said, looking at the claw pendant. No wonder. What? She asked. She could tell, he had the answer. What I did earlier was to use that special kind of mana and make it pass through your body. It seemed to have stimulated your veins to dissolve the mana crystals by themselves and then, miraculously turned them to some kind of nourishment to fix your damaged organs, he said with a thoughtful expression. I might need to investigate this further, he quickly said. Now, do you want me to try to treat you? He asked. Please do, she said quickly with an executing look as she stretched her hand to him. She was sure now. Her wrist, unlike the rest of her body, no longer hurt. You are really trusting, he said in surprise. Quote. She just blushed and looked away. The pain she had been withstanding was just that great. Even if the treatment failed, she was willing to take the risk if she could feel that fresh breeze again. Let's begin then. If you feel anything wrong, please tell me immediately, he reminded her. Yes, Clara nodded nervously. Slowly, Adrian began to create mana threads with inverse chirality using his zero circle. Instead of allowing them to wander his body, he forced them to exit through his hand and then travel along Clara's blood vessels. Thankfully, because of his experience from last night, the process was very smooth. He was just doing it slowly as he monitored Clara's body for any anomalies. As someone who learned medicine in more than 5 worlds he was pretty confident in his skills. Clara, who felt his body relax, couldn't help it. From her mouth strange moans of comfort began to sound. She was completely oblivious to that as the inverse mana made its way through each of her organs, dissolving the mana crystals there and healing her. Damn it, she is trying to seduce us. Damn filthy. MILF. I am not against it. You are sick, she is our mother-in-law. She is pretty, how old is she? 33, 34, yeah, she must have been pretty young when she gave birth to Summer. Stop thinking about her like that. Why not? I am just saying. Come on, we are just having fun here. Mother-in-law, can you lower your voice? Adrian finally said. If she kept at it, he wouldn't be able to focus, and some of his soul fragments with a fetish for older women were getting restless. Sorry, she blushed as she covered her mouth and looked away. Damn it, he was her son-in-law. But the feeling was amazing. Adrian sighed and continued pushing forward with his mana. Thankfully everything was going perfectly, his assumptions were correct and her body was healing up way faster than he expected. Clara was barely able to hold herself as the mana made her feel as if she was relaxing in a hot bathtub, finally reaching her heart. Clara couldn't help but moan loudly. As Adrian dissolved a huge mana gem that naturally formed inside of her heart, it exploded into a wave of energy that spread through her veins. It was an amazing feeling that she never felt before. Bang! The door of the room was kicked open and a young man angrily entered to watch his stepmother go spasming on the hospital bed with drool falling from her mouth and her eyes turning backward in ecstasy like some bitch in heat. That's how the young man saw it. To her side, he couldn't help but notice Adrian, who was leaning over her in a very suspicious way, looking with a frown at the door with one of his hands holding her wrist and the other on her heart.